Vincent Carter was the kind of billionaire people admired from a distance, but feared up close. At 38 years old, he had built one of the largest real estate companies in the country, owned luxury hotels, private jets, and a mansion that overlooked the entire city. Business magazines called him a genius. Investors trusted every decision he made, and his employees believed nothing could distract him from success. But behind the expensive suits and endless meetings was a man who hadn't truly smiled in years. Every day followed the same routine: wake up before sunrise, attend meetings, sign contracts worth millions of dollars, and return to an empty mansion where silence greeted him instead of family. One cold autumn afternoon, Vincent decided to review an important investment proposal in a quiet city park before heading to a board meeting that could make him another $100 million. Sitting alone on a wooden bench with his laptop open, he ignored the laughter of children playing nearby and the peaceful sound of birds singing in the trees. His entire world existed inside numbers, profits, and deadlines. Then something unusual caught his attention. A little girl, no older than 6, was standing only a few feet away, staring at him without saying a word. She wore a faded blue sweater, worn-out shoes, and carried a tiny canvas backpack that looked almost too heavy for her small shoulders. Despite her shabby clothes, there was something extraordinary about her calm, hazel eyes. She wasn't begging for money, asking for food, or trying to get anyone's sympathy. She simply stood there, quietly watching him, as though she had been waiting for him all day. Vincent looked back at his laptop, expecting her to leave, but when he glanced up again, she was still there. After several awkward seconds, he finally closed his laptop and offered a polite smile. "Hello," he said. The little girl smiled back. "Hi, are you here with your parents?" Vincent asked. She slowly shook her head. "No." "Then where are they?" Her smile faded. Looking down at the ground, she answered in a soft voice. "My mommy is in the hospital. The doctors say she's sleeping, but I keep telling them she'll wake up because she promised she'd never leave me." Vincent felt an unexpected ache in his chest. "Who has been taking care of you?" he asked gently. The little girl looked toward the empty park bench beneath an old oak tree and replied with heartbreaking honesty, "Mostly." "That bench," Vincent frowned, unable to believe what he had just heard. "You've been sleeping here?" She nodded. "Only at night. During the day, I walk around, so no one asks me to leave." There was no fear in her voice, only acceptance. Vincent had negotiated billion-dollar contracts without his hands shaking, but this tiny girl's quiet courage left him speechless. Without saying another word, he walked to a nearby food stand and returned a few minutes later carrying a warm sandwich, a bottle of orange juice, and a chocolate chip cookie. He carefully handed them to her. "These are for you." The little girl looked surprised. "But I don't have any money." Vincent smiled softly. "You don't need any." She accepted the food with both hands, whispered, "Thank you," and sat beside him. Instead of eating quickly, she carefully broke the sandwich into small pieces, wrapped half of it in a napkin, and placed it inside her backpack. Curious, Vincent asked, "Why aren't you eating all of it?" She smiled innocently. "If Mom wakes up tonight, she'll be hungry too." Those simple words hit Vincent harder than any business loss ever could. For the first time in years, he realized how small his problems really were. Looking at the little girl, he quietly asked, "What's your name?" She looked into his eyes and answered with the sweetest smile, "Emily." Vincent nodded. "I'm Vincent," Emily giggled. "You don't look like someone who smiles very much, mister." Vincent, he couldn't remember the last time anyone had spoken to him with such honesty. Before he could reply, Emily hugged her little backpack tightly and whispered words that would change his life forever. "I just hope I can find somewhere safe to sleep tonight." Vincent couldn't stop thinking about Emily's last words. "I just hope I can find somewhere safe to sleep tonight." They echoed in his mind long after she finished eating. He had spent years solving billion-dollar business problems, yet he had no idea how a 6-year-old child had survived alone for 3 nights. Emily carefully folded the napkin, placed the remaining half of her sandwich inside her backpack, and zipped it closed as if she were protecting something priceless. Curious, Vincent leaned forward and asked, "Emily, What's inside that backpack? She looked at him for a few seconds before quietly placing it on the bench between them. Everything that matters, she whispered. Slowly, she unzipped it. The first thing she pulled out was a small Bible with worn-out pages. She smiled as she gently brushed the dust from its cover. Mom reads this to me every night, she said. She says whenever I'm scared, I should remember that God is sitting beside me, even if I can't see him. Next, she took out a crayon drawing of a little girl holding hands with her mother beneath a bright yellow sun. I made this for her birthday, Emily explained proudly. She hung it on our apartment wall because she said it was more valuable than any painting in the world. Vincent smiled, but his heart felt heavy. Then Emily removed a tiny silver heart-shaped pendant attached to a broken chain. This belonged to my grandma, she said. Before she died, she told Mom to give it to me when I was old enough to understand what love means. Finally, she reached into the bottom of the backpack and carefully unfolded a letter that had been opened so many times, its edges had begun to tear. She looked at Vincent with innocent eyes. Mom said only someone with a kind heart should ever read this. Vincent accepted the letter carefully and began reading. If you're reading these words, thank you for showing kindness to my daughter. Her name is Emily, and she has a heart bigger than this world. If something happens to me, please don't let her believe she's alone. Tell her I fought every day to come back to her, and remind her that love is the one thing life can never take away. Vincent's hands trembled as he reached the end of the page. He had closed deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars without showing emotion. But this simple letter broke every wall around his heart. At that exact moment, his phone started ringing. It was his assistant, followed immediately by his business partner, Marcus, and then 3 members of his executive board. His biggest meeting of the year was only an hour away. One by one, Vincent looked at the incoming calls and declined every single one. Emily tilted her head and asked softly, "Were those important people?" Vincent looked into her eyes and smiled. "Not as important as you are right now." Emily smiled back, and for the first time in years, Vincent felt something he thought money had erased forever: peace. But that peaceful moment didn't last long. Suddenly, a frightened voice echoed across the park. "Emily, Emily, where are you?" Emily immediately jumped to her feet, her eyes lighting up with hope as an elderly woman came running toward them, completely out of breath. Neither Vincent nor Emily realized that the woman was about to reveal a secret that would change all of their lives forever. Emily's face lit up the moment she heard the familiar voice. "Miss Clara," she shouted, running across the grass and throwing herself into the arms of an elderly woman with silver hair and tired eyes. The woman hugged her tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Oh, thank God you're safe," she whispered over and over. "I've been looking for you everywhere." After making sure Emily wasn't hurt, Miss Clara slowly turned toward Vincent. Her expression immediately became cautious. "Who are you?" she asked firmly. Vincent introduced himself and explained how he had found Emily sitting alone in the park. Before he could finish, Emily smiled and said, "He bought me food, and he listened to me. He's a good man." Hearing those words, Miss Clara's tense expression softened, but only slightly. She invited Vincent to sit beside her on the bench, and, after taking a deep breath, began telling him the heartbreaking story. "Emily's mother is Grace Anderson," she said quietly. "She's been raising Emily alone since the day she was born. She worked 2 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. During the day, she cleaned hotel rooms, and at night, she worked at a small diner. She never complained, because everything she did was for her little girl." Vincent listened in silence as Miss Clara continued. 3 days ago, Grace slipped while carrying cleaning supplies down a staircase at the hotel. She hit her head so hard that she fell into a coma. Without insurance or savings, the hospital couldn't do much beyond emergency treatment. And when the landlord realized the rent wouldn't be paid, he changed the locks and threw them out without waiting for anyone. Vincent clenched his fists in disbelief. "So Emily has been living here ever since?" Miss Clara nodded sadly. "I've been bringing her food whenever I could, but I'm 72 years old. I live in a tiny apartment with my disabled sister. I wanted to take Emily home, but I simply don't have the space or the money." Vincent looked toward Emily. who was quietly feeding pieces of her cookie to a small bird, smiling as if she had forgotten her own pain. It was impossible to understand how someone so young could carry so much hope. After several moments of silence, Vincent stood up and made a decision that surprised even himself. "Emily isn't spending another night in this park," he said firmly. "Until Grace recovers, she'll stay somewhere safe." Miss Clara looked at him with uncertainty. "You barely know her," she replied. Vincent looked at Emily before answering. "Maybe I don't know her story completely, but I know enough to understand that no child should ever wonder where she'll sleep." Miss Clara searched his face one last time before slowly nodding. Just then, Emily walked back toward them with the biggest smile on her face. "Does this mean I don't have to sleep on the bench tonight?" she asked hopefully. Vincent knelt in front of her and smiled. "No, Emily, tonight, you're finally going home." Neither of them realized that the journey to Vincent's home would uncover a connection between him and Emily's mother that had been buried for years. A few minutes later, Vincent's black luxury SUV pulled up beside the park. Emily stared at the shiny vehicle with wide, curious eyes, but didn't move. Is it really okay if I ride with you?" she asked softly. Vincent smiled and opened the door for her. "Of course. You're my guest." Emily carefully climbed inside, holding her little backpack tightly against her chest, afraid she might accidentally make something dirty. During the drive, she looked out the window in amazement as bright city lights reflected across the glass. Every tall building made her smile, every bridge seemed magical, and every passing street felt like an adventure she had never imagined. Nearly 30 minutes later, the SUV stopped in front of a massive iron gate. As the gate slowly opened, Emily gasped. A breathtaking mansion stood in the middle of beautifully landscaped gardens, with sparkling fountains, colorful flowers, and lights glowing from every corner. "Do people really live here?" she whispered in disbelief. Vincent smiled faintly. "Only one person. Until today." The words slipped out before he even realized what he had said. As they entered the house, several housekeepers and security guards greeted Vincent, but every one of them froze when they saw the little girl standing beside him. No one had ever seen their billionaire boss bring anyone home, especially a child. Emily nervously hid behind Vincent's leg, clutching her backpack even tighter. "Don't be scared," Vincent said gently. "Everyone here is kind." One of the housekeepers, Mrs. Lewis, stepped forward with a warm smile. "Would you like something to eat, sweetheart?" Emily nodded shyly. Minutes later, a warm dinner was placed in front of her. Before touching the food, she quietly bowed her head and whispered a short prayer. The entire dining room fell silent. Even the staff exchanged surprised glances. They had worked in this mansion for years, but none of them had ever seen someone express so much gratitude for such a simple meal. After dinner, Vincent showed Emily a beautiful bedroom prepared for guests. It was larger than the apartment she had once shared with her mother. There was a soft white bed, colorful blankets, shelves filled with books, and dozens of stuffed animals that had never been played with. Emily slowly walked around the room, touching everything with wonder, before turning back to Vincent. "Can I really sleep here?" she asked, almost afraid to believe it. Vincent nodded. "This room is yours for as long as you need it." Emily placed her backpack on the bed, climbed under the blanket, and looked at him with grateful eyes. "Thank you for giving me a home. Even if it's just for a little while." Vincent smiled, but something inside him suddenly felt different. For years, he had believed this mansion represented success. Yet standing in that room beside one grateful little girl, he realized it had never truly been a home till she walked through its doors. As he quietly closed the bedroom door behind him, his phone suddenly rang. The screen displayed an unfamiliar hospital number. Vincent answered immediately, and the doctor on the other end spoke words that made his heart stop. "Mr. Carter, Grace's condition has changed. You need to come to the hospital right away."
Vincent drove to the hospital faster than he ever had in his life. Emily sat quietly beside him, holding her little backpack against her chest and praying softly the entire way. Neither of them spoke. The silence inside the car was filled with fear, hope, and unanswered questions. As soon as they arrived at St. Mary's Medical Center, a doctor escorted them to a private consultation room. His expression was serious. "Mr. Carter," he began, "Grace's condition became unstable about an hour ago. We managed to stabilize her, but she needs emergency brain surgery. Without it, her chances of surviving the next 24 hours are very low." Emily's eyes instantly filled with tears. "Please save my mommy," she whispered. The doctor sighed. "We want to, sweetheart, but the surgery is extremely expensive, and there are legal documents that still need approval." Before he could finish, Vincent reached into his jacket, placed his black credit card on the table, and said firmly, "Forget the paperwork. Forget the cost. Schedule the surgery immediately. If it costs $1 million, I'll pay it. If it costs $10 million, I'll still pay it. Just save her life." The doctor looked at Vincent in surprise before nodding and rushing out of the room. Emily stared at him with wide, tearful eyes. "Why are you helping us?" she asked. Vincent knelt in front of her and gently wiped away a tear from her cheek. "Because no little girl should ever lose her mother. If there's something I can do to stop it." Emily threw her arms around him without saying another word. It was the first time anyone had hugged Vincent with nothing but pure love. Hours later, as Grace was being prepared for surgery, a nurse approached Vincent carrying a small envelope sealed inside a clear plastic bag. "This was found in Grace's personal belongings," the nurse explained. "She left instructions that if anything happened to her, this letter should only be given to a man named Vincent Carter." Vincent's heart skipped a beat. "Are you sure?" he asked. The nurse nodded. "Your full name is written on the front." With trembling hands, Vincent looked at the faded handwriting. There was no mistake. Across the envelope, it read, "To Vincent Carter. If life ever gives you a second chance." His mind raced. He had never told Emily his last name. He had never met Grace, at least. That's what he believed. Slowly, he opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. As his eyes scanned the very first line, the color drained from his face. The woman lying unconscious in the operating room wasn't a stranger at all. She was the woman he had loved and lost 8 years ago. And the next sentence revealed a secret that would change his life forever. Vincent stood alone in the quiet hospital corridor, staring at the old envelope in his trembling hands. His name was written across the front in handwriting he hadn't seen in nearly 8 years. Slowly, he unfolded the letter, his heart pounding harder with every second. The first line made him stop breathing. "Dear Vincent, if you're reading this, then life has finally brought you back to us." His hands shook as he continued. "I don't know where you've been or what your life has become. Maybe you forgot about me, or maybe fate simply pulled us in different directions. But before you judge me for keeping this secret, you deserve to know the truth. 2 months after you left, I found out I was pregnant. I tried everything to find you. I called your old number every week. I wrote letters that were returned and opened. I even visited your office before your company became successful, but you had already moved away. Eventually, I stopped searching because I realized our daughter needed a mother more than I needed answers." Vincent felt his knees weaken. His eyes filled with tears as he reached the next page. "Her name is Emily. She has your smile, your kindness, and your stubborn heart. Every birthday she asked me about her father. I never told her you abandoned us. I simply said you were a good man who got lost somewhere in the world. I wanted her to grow up believing love is stronger than bitterness." Vincent covered his mouth, unable to hold back his emotions. Every success he had ever celebrated suddenly felt meaningless. While he had been building a billion-dollar empire, a little girl with his eyes had been growing up without a father. Just then, the operating room doors opened. The surgeon stepped into the hallway and removed his surgical mask. Vincent immediately stood up, his heart racing. Emily grabbed his hands so tightly her tiny fingers trembled. After a long pause, the doctor smiled gently. "The surgery was successful. Grace is alive." Emily burst into tears of relief and hugged Vincent as tightly as she could. For a brief moment, hope filled the hallway again. But before anyone could celebrate, the doctor added one more sentence. "She's stable. But there's something else you need to know." Before losing consciousness, Grace asked us to arrange a DNA test if we ever found a man named Vincent Carter. The laboratory rushed the results this morning. The doctor handed Vincent a sealed medical report. His heartbeat echoed in his ears as he slowly opened it. His eyes stopped on the final line. "Probability of paternity, 99.99%. Vincent's world stood still. Emily wasn't just a little girl he had chosen to help. She was his daughter. At that exact moment, Emily looked up at him with innocent eyes and quietly asked, "Mr. Vincent, why are you crying?" Vincent couldn't answer. He simply pulled her into his arms, knowing that the greatest miracle of his life had been standing beside him from the very beginning. Vincent stood frozen in the hospital hallway, the DNA report still open in his hands. 99.99%. The number felt unreal, yet the truth had never been clearer. The little girl who had slept on a park bench shared her sandwich with the thought of her mother waking up hungry, and trusted him without hesitation was his daughter. Emily looked up at him with confusion as tears continued to fall down his face. "Mr. Vincent, did I do something wrong?" she asked softly. Vincent immediately dropped to his knees in front of her. "No, sweetheart," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You did nothing wrong." He gently held her tiny hands and took a deep breath, trying to find words that could explain 6 years of absence in a single moment. "Emily, there's something very important I need to tell you. A long time ago, before you were born, your mother and I knew each other. We loved each other very much." Emily listened with complete attention. Vincent swallowed hard. The doctors just confirmed something incredible. "I'm not just your friend," his eyes filled with tears again. "I'm your father." The hallway became completely silent. Emily blinked several times, trying to understand what she had just heard. Slowly, she looked toward Grace's hospital room, then back at Vincent. "You're my daddy," she whispered. Vincent nodded, unable to speak. For a few heartbreaking seconds, he feared she might reject him for the years he had missed. Instead, Emily took one small step forward and wrapped her arms around his neck. "I prayed for you every night," she whispered against his shoulder. Vincent broke down completely, holding his daughter as if he were afraid the moment might disappear. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there," he said through tears. "I didn't know about you. If I had known, I would have crossed the world to find you." Emily pulled back just enough to look at him. "Mom said good people sometimes get lost," she said innocently. "But she also said God knows how to bring them home." Vincent closed his eyes, overwhelmed by the grace in her words. Just then, a nurse hurried toward them with urgent news. "Mr. Carter," she said breathlessly, "Grace is awake." And the first thing she asked was whether Emily's father had come back. Vincent looked at his daughter, who smiled through her tears and squeezed his hand. "Let's go tell Mom that her prayer finally came true," she whispered. Together, hand in hand, they walked toward Grace's room, unaware that someone watching from the shadows had no intention of letting this family stay together peacefully. Grace slowly opened her eyes as Vincent and Emily entered the hospital room together. The moment she saw them holding hands, tears filled her eyes. She didn't need anyone to explain what had happened. She already knew. Vincent walked to her bedside and gently took her hand. "I know the truth now," he whispered. "I know Emily is my daughter. And I know you've carried this burden alone for 6 years. I'm so sorry." Grace looked at him for a long moment before quietly saying, "I never wanted your money, Vincent. I only wanted Emily to know that her father was a good man." Vincent lowered his head in shame. "I wasn't a good man," he admitted. "But if you'll let me, I'll spend the rest of my life becoming the father and husband you both deserve." Before Grace could answer, Emily climbed onto the bed and wrapped her arms around both of them. "No more crying," she said with a smile. "Families are supposed to stay together." For the first time in years, all three of them laughed together. It felt like a brand new beginning. But that peaceful moment didn't last long. Outside the room, Vincent's phone began ringing over and over again. It was Marcus. Vincent stepped into the hallway and answered. Marcus sounded terrified. "Vincent, where are you?" "The board meeting is happening right now." Vincent calmly replied, "I'm at the hospital with my family." Marcus took a deep breath before delivering even worse news. "Serena has convinced several board members that you've abandoned the company. She's using your absence to remove you as CEO. If the vote passes today, she'll own controlling interest in Carter Global. Everything you've built will belong to her." Vincent closed his eyes for a moment. A few weeks ago, he would have rushed straight to the office without thinking twice. But today was different. He looked through the glass window into Grace's room, where Emily was helping her mother drink a glass of water while laughing at one of her own silly jokes. That single image was worth more than every skyscraper, every luxury car, and every dollar he had ever earned. Marcus waited anxiously for an answer. Finally, Vincent spoke with complete confidence. "For years I sacrificed the people I love to protect my business. I'm not making that mistake again. If Serena wants my company, let her fight for it. Right now, my daughter needs her father." Marcus remained silent for several seconds before quietly saying, "Then you should know one more thing. Serena isn't just trying to steal your company anymore. She's hired private investigators to dig into Grace and Emily's lives. I think she's planning something much worse." Vincent's expression instantly changed. His greatest fear was no longer losing his fortune, it was losing the family he had only just found. Without wasting another second, he called his head of security and gave a simple order. "From this moment on, no one gets anywhere near Grace or Emily without my permission." Neither Vincent nor Marcus realized that Serena had already made her next move. And before the sun set, Emily would disappear without leaving a single clue. Vincent's phone slipped from his hand as the head of security delivered the words no father ever wants to hear. "Mr. Carter, Emily is gone." For a moment, the world around him seemed to disappear. He rushed back into Grace's hospital room, only to find her bed empty except for Grace, whose frightened eyes immediately searched behind him. "Where's Emily?" she asked. Vincent couldn't answer. The silence on his face told Grace everything. Her heartbeat monitor began racing as panic filled the room. "No," she whispered. "Please don't tell me she's gone." Vincent grabbed her hand and forced himself to stay calm. "I promise you, Grace, I will bring our daughter home." Within minutes, the entire hospital was placed on lockdown. Security officers reviewed every surveillance camera while Vincent ordered his private security team to search every exit, parking garage, and nearby street. Marcus arrived carrying a tablet filled with security footage. "We found something," he said. The video showed Emily leaving the hospital room after receiving a message from a woman dressed as a nurse. The woman had told Emily that her father had been injured in the parking garage and needed her immediately. Believing Vincent was in danger, Emily followed without hesitation. Moments later, both of them disappeared into a black SUV waiting outside the emergency entrance. Vincent's fists clenched in anger. "Find that vehicle," he ordered. "I don't care how much it costs." His security team immediately contacted police, traffic control, and every private surveillance network in the city. Within an hour, they located the SUV entering an abandoned warehouse district on the outskirts of town. Vincent refused to wait for the police. Ignoring every warning, he jumped into his car with Marcus and raced toward the location himself. When they arrived, the warehouse looked deserted, but Vincent could hear a faint voice calling from inside. "Daddy," Emily cried. Without thinking, Vincent forced open the rusted metal door and ran through the dark building. At the far end of the warehouse, Emily sat tied to a chair, frightened but unharmed. The moment she saw Vincent, tears streamed down her face. "Daddy," she screamed again. Vincent rushed forward and untied the ropes, pulling her into his arms. "I'm here," he whispered. "I promised I'd never leave you again." Emily held him as tightly as she could. "I knew you'd come," she sobbed. But before they could leave, slow applause echoed through the empty warehouse. Vincent turned around and saw Serena stepping out of the shadows with a cold smile on her face. Several armed bodyguards stood behind her, blocking the only exit. Serena looked directly into Vincent's eyes and said, "You had to choose between your company and your family. And you chose wrong. Now you're going to lose both." Vincent stepped in front of Emily, shielding her with his body. He knew the final battle wasn't about money anymore, it was about protecting the two people he loved most. And before the night was over, one decision would change all of their lives forever. The cold warehouse fell silent as Serena stepped forward with a smile that revealed just how far she was willing to go. Her bodyguards blocked every exit while Emily clung tightly to Vincent's arm. Grace had already called the police from the hospital after discovering Emily was missing, and Marcus had secretly activated the emergency tracker inside Vincent's watch. And known to Serena, help was already on its way. "You could have had everything," Serena said coldly. "The company, the fortune, the perfect life. Instead, you threw it all away for a woman who has nothing and a little girl you never even knew existed." Vincent gently moved Emily behind him and looked Serena straight in the eyes. "You're wrong," he replied calmly. "I didn't lose everything. I finally found everything that truly matters. Serena's smile disappeared. Furious, she ordered her men to stop Vincent from leaving. Just as the bodyguards rushed forward, the sound of police sirens echoed outside the warehouse. Red and blue lights flashed through the broken windows, followed by officers surrounding the building from every direction. Realizing her plan had failed, Serena tried to escape through a back door, but she was stopped by detectives before she could take another step. As officers placed her in handcuffs, she turned toward Vincent with anger burning in her eyes. "You'll regret choosing them over your empire," she shouted. Vincent simply smiled. "No," he answered. "For the first time in my life, I made the right choice." A few days later, Serena was formally charged with kidnapping, fraud, conspiracy, and attempted extortion. The board of Carter Global removed her from every position she held, while Marcus was appointed interim CEO so Vincent could focus on what mattered most: his family. Weeks passed, and Grace continued to recover until the doctors finally discharged her from the hospital. On the day she came home, Vincent drove her and Emily back to the same park where their journey had begun. The old wooden bench still stood beneath the oak tree. Emily walked over, smiled, and gently placed her tiny backpack on the bench one last time. "I don't need to carry my whole life in here anymore," she said softly, "because now my home is wherever Mom and Dad are." Grace wiped away her tears as Vincent wrapped his arms around both of them. Looking at the bench, he whispered, "The richest day of my life wasn't when I made my first billion. It was the day a little girl asked for nothing and gave me everything." Months later, Vincent and Grace were married in a simple outdoor ceremony attended by close friends. Miss Clara, the hospital staff who had cared for Grace, and everyone who had witnessed their incredible journey. Emily proudly walked between them, holding both of their hands as they became a family at last. The mansion that had once echoed with loneliness was now filled with laughter, bedtime stories, family dinners, and the kind of happiness no amount of money could ever buy. Vincent had spent years believing success was measured by wealth. But Emily taught him the greatest lesson of all: a person isn't truly rich because of what's in their bank account, they're rich because of who's waiting for them when they come home. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another inspiring story. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were Vincent? Share this story with someone who believes that one act of kindness can change a life forever. Remember, sometimes the greatest blessing arrives when you stop chasing money and start following your heart.